2022 NFL Conference Championship review. Let's come out and say it. Very disappointed by these two title games. I was excited coming into Conference Championship weekend. I thought we had two good games, especially the NFC, where I'll spend the majority of our time. And I thought this was going to be a long review. It's not, just because these two games disappointed me. And I don't think there is a lot to break down. I've heard it all week. The 49ers and Eagles had the two deepest and stacked rosters in football. That's what made this game exciting for me. And the fact that they didn't face each other in the regular season. So we hadn't seen it yet. The start of the season, middle season, end of the season, this was new. You have the number one seed in the Eagles, and then you have the hottest team in football winning 12 straight in the 49ers. And the game was over in the first quarter. And before I play the blame game and pointing fingers from a 49er fan perspective, the Eagles were more prepared. The Eagles were better coached. The Eagles wanted it more. The Eagles won the line of scrimmage. I picked the Eagles anyway. I was picking the Eagles in a close game. Home field advantage mattered. The fact that they secured that, give them credit. And it did help them on this day, even though this game was determined quickly and early. The Eagles get the ball first. They score on the opening drive. And there are just strange things that happen. Fred Warner goes down. Fred Warner never gets hurt. He's as durable as a middle linebacker could possibly get. So I see him down on the ground. I'm like, oh, game's over. If he's not coming back in, game is over. Good news was he was back in a few plays. Then there's the controversial Devontae Smith catch, which, to be fair, in real time, I thought it was a catch too. But Kyle Shanahan, how do you not call a timeout? It's one thing if you don't throw a challenge flag, and again, this is happening fast, it's happening in real time. If you're seeing the Eagles running the line of scrimmage, you got to at least call timeout if you're not throwing the challenge flag. We learn afterwards with the additional angle that we received, it was not a catch. Again, I thought it was a catch in real time after seeing it, and I just thought, well, just gonna have to swallow it. Tip your cap. What can you do? But how would that game have been different if that was ruled an incompletion? The 49ers get the ball back. It's 0-0. We know what happens. Purdy gets hit by Reddick on the 49ers' first possession, and that's the game. Right there. And who's to blame? For me, it's first and foremost Kyle Shanahan. I heard Larry Krueger say, how about putting some blame on Purdy? He didn't get rid of the ball fast enough. And one of the strengths of Purdy was, unlike someone like Garoppolo, he has the timer going off saying, okay, I got to get rid of the ball. He feels the rush. He has pocket presence. And he usually doesn't take big hits. Okay, I see that. But what is the common factor here? Kyle Shanahan gets his quarterbacks hurt. Trey Lance, when he went down, I blame that on Kyle Shanahan. When Garoppolo went down, to me, it was more on Garoppolo. And it's not just me being hypercritical of Jimmy Garoppolo. This one, a failure to protect your quarterback because you have a backup tight end blocking their premier pass rusher in Reddick. And I said coming the game, the big matchup is McGlinchey versus Reddick. Look out. Well, you had Croft, a backup tight end who doesn't get much action. He gets the assignment to block Reddick. And I know things happen in the game. It's not like playing Madden. Okay? the unexpected happens. That's why we like sports. Real, live sports with real people and real players, and we're not just on the computer. We're not playing video games. But that was a coaching failure. I mean, you have got 3 quarterbacks injured this year. Lance was a season ender. Garoppolo, well, pretty much a season ender. And then Purdy, season ender. They bring Josh Johnson in, and Josh Johnson he's a practice squad quarterback. I mean, he's been in the league for years and years. He's a practice squad quarterback. And when Purdy went down, it was over. There was no chance that they were winning the game. The Eagles won. And that's why I say, well done, Eagles, because there was nothing dirty about that play. It's all in the game. They got to the quarterback. The 49ers didn't. And is it too bad? Yeah, it's too bad. Is it disappointing? Yes. The Eagles got the job done. The 49ers didn't. But Kyle Shanahan, protect your quarterbacks. And he didn't do Josh Johnson a whole lot of favors either. Reddick hits him right away, and then eventually later in the game he gets concussed, and then Purdy has to come back in. He can't throw the ball. And I know if he could have done anything, he would have done something, but we find out his elbow's busted, and he's going to need off-season surgery, a minimum of 6 months to heal up. What a disaster. And I don't have to say anything else about the game except, McCaffrey was amazing. And unfortunately, I can't really comment on any other 49er because the defense actually held up. It was 7-7 in the second quarter. The defense held up, and I was picking the Eagles to win the game. If the 49ers had their quarterback, I think they would have won. I do. They made adjustments on defense, and they were holding the Eagles' offense down. And I know, too, the Eagles didn't have to take any risks because they knew, hey, it's just a matter now of not blowing it. Don't lose the game. Don't do anything stupid or careless out there. But what were the big plays from the Eagles? Other than Devontae Smith's catch, which really was not a catch, there was nothing out there. I mean, it was 7-7 when Josh Johnson was there in the second quarter, and what happened was the offense imploding with Josh Johnson. It was a nightmare having him out there, giving the football away, and then the defense being on the field the whole game. And I do feel cheated that we should have had a great championship game, and now it's always going to be, well, what if? What if Brock Purdy didn't get hurt? What if that opening catch by Devontae Smith was ruled an incompletion? And I'm not taking the game away from the Eagles. I say that again, not taking it away from the Eagles. They earned the win. They won it. It's too bad, though, that you're going to have to say, well, what happened? What could have happened if you had 2 healthy teams? And Kyle Shanahan, what does that say about you? You could not even keep your 4th quarterback upright on the field. And the Eagles have an excellent pass rush. They were number 2 all time in sacks, 17 game regular season. But you couldn't keep your quarterback up. Do your quarterbacks some favors once in a while. He doesn't do it. In watching the game and the 49ers, the frustration build up, especially by the defensive players and Trent Williams, I can't excuse that. I understand on one level the frustration because of going back for some of these guys to the 2019 Super Bowl. I mean, that is just about as bad as it gets. And then last year, the game, they were up 10 points in the fourth quarter against the Rams, and they find a way to lose it. And then this happening. It's as if the game, from our perspective, the game wasn't even played. That's how I felt. We never really even got to see the game, and you're saying, well, let's look back and give it some perspective. And I didn't do this review right away because I like to have some perspective. It's not just about instant reactions. Where does this game fall into the all-time worst 49er losses? That's an episode to do. The all-time worst 49er playoff losses. Of course, the Super Bowls are the worst. But in championship games? Last year, I felt that the Rams championship game, while I've been watching football, was the worst. Because I never expected to win the game in Seattle. The 2013 championship game, never expected to win it. It was awful what happened because it was close. But last year's game, they had it, and this was a team they owned. So where does it rank there? I mean, think about the 90 championship game against the Giants and all that changed because of the loss, Joe Montana getting hurt. I mean, you can make the argument, and there are those who are much older than I am, have been a fan longer than I have. So they said this was the worst because you didn't even get to see the game really play out. It was 3 quarters of a game without a quarterback. And going back and forth, I was saying, last year was still worse against the Rams. At this point, I'm saying, no, this was, at least in my experience, the worst. And I think the arguments between the 90 championship game and this game as the worst championship game loss for the 49ers. But who's to blame? Come on, Kyle Shanahan didn't get it done again. And is he going to be held accountable for this? Probably not. Eagles advance. They're off to the Super Bowl. Now for the AFC Championship game, which was a very different kind of game because the first game, the NFC title game, was a matchup of 2 great teams. To me, this is the matchup between the 2 great quarterbacks, Mahomes and Burrow. It just wasn't that good of a game. I mean, it wasn't exciting at the end, yes, but the Bengals started off slow, and I picked Cincinnati to win. What we learned was home field advantage still really matters. And it was a big ask to say to the Bengals, go into Buffalo in the snow and beat the Bills on the road against a quarterback like Josh Allen. And I like Josh Allen. I respect his game. And he does things that other players physically can't do. But I would not put him on the same level as Mahomes and Burrow. That's me. But then asking them to do that and win like they did, and then go the next week and say, well, go into Kansas City and win. That is a tall task to do that. And they didn't have their A game. That's the problem. I feel like they didn't even have their B game. The Bengals had their C game. Joe Burrow was not sharp. The Bengals just didn't make the plays, and the officiating was very poor. And the officiating was poor in both the 49ers, Eagles, and the Chiefs, Bengals. We'll remember this as the Patrick Mahomes game. Mahomes beat Burrow and the Bengals when he's hobbling And he made the plays. He made the plays, and this is one of those legacy games where we'll remember what he overcame to win and get to his third Super Bowl in 4 years. Arrowhead. The great thing about this weekend, though, was you had 2 outdoor games on grass, and I keep repeating myself, but what a victory that the AFC Championship game, it's unbelievable to even say this, was not played in Atlanta, indoors, on turf. Arrowhead was about as good as it gets. What an environment. And that's what football should all be about. But a home field advantage, so huge for the Chiefs. If this played in Cincinnati, I think the outcome could have been very different. That number 1 seed, get it. The Chiefs played tough. They made the Bengals earn what they had to on offense. Patrick Mahomes, in his injured condition, outplayed Joe Burrow. He made the plays. The Chiefs' defense stopped the Bengals when they had to. The Chiefs advance. The Bengals go home once more, falling short. And you have that with the 49ers and the Bengals these 2 years. Heartbreaking losses. And I look at the Bengals and say, what could have been different? Unfortunately for them, they improved the offensive line, but then the offensive line was injured, so they really didn't have any advantage over where they were last year. I think they got great weapons on offense. Is they need more on defense. I'm looking at their defense. They're well coached. They're disciplined. They're a good tackling team. But they didn't have enough difference makers that would come up with the big sack or the interception off Mahomes or whoever they're playing. They need more on defense against these big-time quarterbacks, and they didn't have enough. The 49ers, wow, I don't know what to even say about the quarterback situation. I don't know what to say about Kyle Shanahan. We can get into that more later. But you have the Chiefs and the Eagles, the top teams from each conference, the number 1 seeds, and make it through. And what do people are saying? Well, it's the Andy Reid Bowl. It's the Kelsey brothers against each other. It's an interesting Super Bowl. However, it's not the one that really I was necessarily hoping for. Not bad. At least you can say that it's never been played before. These 2 teams have never gone at it at the Super Bowl. I like the Eagles. I'll come out and say that right now. They're, without a doubt, the superior all-around team. It's going to be played in Arizona. And this is where legacies are made. This is where legends are made. And we'll get into that in the Super Bowl preview. But that's about all I got for the conference championship game. I feel deflated. The other football fans don't feel that way. But we're moving on to the Super Bowl.